I wasn't supposed to end up in that apartment. But heartbreak has a way of derailing everything: your sense of judgment, your sense of direction, even your ability to care about things like sunlight or neighborhood safety. So when I signed a lease for a studio on the third floor of a decaying brick building on Chicago's north side, I didn't think twice. It was cheap, close to work, furnished, even. The landlord, Mr. Kelly, was quiet and barely looked me in the eye. That felt like a perk at the time. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I just wanted silence. The apartment was narrow, just one long hallway of cracked hardwood and yellowing white walls. One window, no balcony. The only view was a back alley, where dumpsters rotted beneath an always flickering street lamp. I moved in on a Sunday. By Monday night, I already felt off. It started small. A chill that clung to the apartment. No matter how high I cranked the radiator. A strange mildew smell near the closet that wouldn't go away, even after I doused it with citrus-scented cleaner. And then the note. It came 2 weeks in. I had just gotten back from work, headphones on, music blaring, usual routine. I closed the door behind me, tossed my keys into the bowl, and noticed something on the kitchen counter that hadn't been there when I left. A folded piece of notebook paper. No envelope, no markings. I opened it. Nice shirt today. That was all. No signature, no smiley face, nothing. Just those 4 words in thin, straight handwriting. My heart sank into my stomach. I looked down. I had worn a new shirt today, a faded navy button-up I'd never worn before. I turned in slow circles, scanning the apartment. The doors were locked. The windows sealed. The landlord had told me he never entered tenants' rooms unless there was a maintenance issue. Still, I called him. He insisted no one had been inside. Said I must have left the door unlocked. Said it was probably a prank. This is a college town, he said. Kids are weird. But it didn't feel like a prank. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the moment I found the note, the way it was positioned neatly, dead center on the counter, like someone had taken their time with it. At around 2 a.m., I got up to get a glass of water. That's when I noticed it. The blinds were open. I never leave the blinds open, especially not in this apartment, where the alley stares back at you like an open throat. I tiptoed to the window, heart pounding, pulled the blinds shut. Then, for a reason I can't explain, I reached up and turned off the kitchen light. I needed to see out. Outside, the alley was empty at first, but then, under the flickering lamp, I saw a figure. They were facing the building, unmoving, not smoking, not looking at a phone, just standing, staring. I backed away from the window, careful not to breathe too loud. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. By morning, the figure was gone. I convinced myself it had been a hallucination, a shadow, maybe, or my own reflection playing tricks. That's what exhaustion does. It makes you see ghosts in all the wrong places. Still, I left for work early that day and didn't come back until it was nearly dark. I stared at the apartment door for a full minute before unlocking it. My hand trembled slightly on the knob. Everything inside looked the same, but it felt thinner, like something had passed through it and scraped away a layer of peace. Nothing was missing, no signs of entry. But that didn't stop me from buying a deadbolt the next morning, or from dragging an old chair from the alley and wedging it beneath the doorknob when I slept. On Friday night, the dream started. At first, there were vague, distorted voices echoing from closets, faceless people watching me from dark corners, static humming beneath the floorboards. I'd wake up gasping, drenched in sweat, every hair on my body standing up like an alarm bell. Then I'd check the windows and the doors. Still locked, still shut, but one dream stayed with me. In it, I was sitting on my couch, same spot, same lights, except I wasn't alone. There was someone behind me. I couldn't see them, but I felt their breath, warm and rhythmic, brushing the back of my neck. I tried to move, but couldn't. I just sat there, paralyzed, as something cold touched my shoulder. And then I heard it, a whisper, You remember us now. I woke up screaming. That phrase followed me through the weekend like a thorn under the skin. You remember us now. I didn't know what it meant, but it stirred something in me, some long-buried memory that scratched at the edges of thought. I couldn't place it. Then Sunday night, it all came rushing back. I had dozed off with the TV, playing some late-night cooking show with laughter and blaring commercials. Around 3 a.m., I woke up needing water. As I stood in the kitchen, something caught my eye. Movement. A flicker. In the window. The blinds were closed, but not all the way. One slat near the bottom was bent just enough for me to see through. There, beneath the same broken street lamp, stood the figure again. Only this time they were closer, much closer, no more than 10 feet from the building, staring straight up at my window. Same posture, same stillness. No phone, no coat, no face that I could make out, just a black silhouette of a man who didn't blink. I dropped to the floor, crawled back toward the couch. I don't know how long I stayed there, back pressed to the wall, eyes wide and heart beating like it wanted to escape my ribs. I didn't call the police. Something about it felt beyond that. This wasn't just trespassing. It was something older, something that remembered me. I didn't leave the apartment the next day. I called in sick, curled on the couch like a child, holding a kitchen knife and a flashlight. By noon, I was convinced I was losing my mind, until I found the second note. It was inside my refrigerator, taped to the jug of milk, folded, again, with the same narrow handwriting. You can't hide from the woods. I dropped it. For the first time in years, I thought about Oregon, about the house my mother and I lived in before she remarried. A creaky 2-bedroom shack tucked deep into the forest, miles from the nearest town. We'd moved there after her divorce, when I was maybe 7 or 8. I hadn't thought of that place in forever, but now I couldn't stop thinking about it. Because when I closed my eyes, I could see them, 3 shadows just beyond the tree line, watching, always watching. The memory hit me like a wave crashing against stone, sudden, forceful, and impossible to ignore. It was the summer I turned 8, the first summer in Oregon. My mom had rented the place from some old family friend. It was the kind of house that moaned with every gust of wind. No neighbors for miles, just endless trees and silence. At first, I loved it. I was a curious kid. The forest was my playground. But then, the watching started. I remember it beginning with small things. Little trails of rocks leading up to the porch that I never placed. Whispers from the woods just after sunset. My mother told me it was a wind, that forests had their own sounds. But I knew better. Wind doesn't whisper your name. I remember standing at my bedroom window late one night and seeing them 3 shapes just beyond the edge of the clearing, perfectly still. They stood like statues, not hiding, not moving, just watching. I ran to tell my mom, dragging her by the arm back to the window. They were gone. Of course they were. After that, I stopped playing in the woods. I stuck to the porch, slept with the lights on. But no matter what I did, I always felt that tug at the back of my mind, the sensation of eyes on me. It wasn't imagination. It was presence. Then one day, a note appeared on my pillow. "Don't forget us." I'd screamed. My mom swore up and down she hadn't put it there. Said maybe I did it in my sleep, but I knew she didn't believe that. Not really. 2 weeks later, we moved back to California, and I never saw the forest again. Now, 20 years later, I was back in another place that felt just as isolated, just as watched, and the notes had returned. I stayed home the rest of the week, didn't answer calls, didn't check emails. I just sat, eyes darting between the door and the window, clutching the flashlight like a lifeline. The dreams got worse, more detailed. I was back in the woods, older, but still afraid. The 3 figures stood behind trees closer now. No longer shadows, but something off. Their bodies looked stretched, elongated, like silhouettes printed on wax paper. and pulled at both ends. I couldn't see their faces, but I knew they were grinning. Each night, they came closer, and each morning I found new notes. One on my bathroom mirror. "We found you again." Another on the underside of my pillow. "You can't unsee us." It wasn't just paranoia anymore. I could feel them like static in the air. My phone would glitch when I walked by the window. My lights would flicker when I tried to sleep. By Saturday, I hadn't slept in over 40 hours. That's when I decided to confront it. I turned off all the lights in the apartment, opened the blinds wide, sat on the couch, and waited. At 2:11 a.m., they came. Not just one this time. 3 figures stood beneath the street lamp, perfectly spaced, not moving, not speaking, just watching. I stood slowly. My hands shook as I walked toward the window. Something inside me screamed to run, but I was done running. I needed answers, needed closure. I pressed my palm to the glass. One of the figures tilted its head. Then, all at once, the street lamp burst glass, showering the alley like sparks. The light snapped off, and in that instant, I saw them clearly. They weren't men. They were tall, their arms longer than human, their limbs jerking like puppets, and their eyes glowing, narrow slits that burned into mine across the distance. I stumbled backward, heart threatening to collapse. The apartment was dead quiet, but I could hear breathing, not mine, heavy, rasping inside the room. I turned, the closet door creaked open, and a voice low and distorted whispered from the dark, "We never left." I stood frozen, breath caught in my throat. The closet door, cracked just enough to show the inky black within, seemed to exhale its own cold air. I knew I hadn't left it open. I never did. And the voice, it hadn't come from behind the door. It had come from within the room, as if the shadows themselves had spoken. I took one step backward. A floorboard groaned under my heel, and the whisper came again. "We watched you sleep." I turned and bolted to the front door. The chair was still braced on a knob, but in my panic, I fumbled it, knocking it over instead of moving it cleanly. My fingers trembled against the lock, trying to twist it open. Another sound behind me, something dragging across the floor. I didn't look. I couldn't. When the lock finally gave, I threw the door open and sprinted into the hallway barefoot. I didn't stop until I was in the stairwell, my chest heaving, sweat turning cold against my back. My heartbeat throbbed in my ears like war drums. I ran down all 3 flights and out into the street, straight into the biting night air. And the alley was empty. The lamp was shattered. Glass glimmered in the moonlight like salt. But the figures were gone. I didn't go back up. I couldn't. I sat on the curb, knees pulled to my chest until sunrise. By then, I'd made my decision. I was done. The next day, I broke my lease. Kelly didn't argue. In fact, he looked almost relieved. "We've had a few tenants leave early," he mumbled, eyes down. "People get spooked in old buildings, you know?" "No," I wanted to say. "People get hunted in buildings like this." I didn't say it. Instead, I packed everything I owned into 2 bags, called a friend on the couch, and never looked back. Or at least, I tried not to. Weeks passed. I started to breathe again. Ate real meals. Slept through the night. For a while, it felt like the nightmare had ended, until last Tuesday. I came home from work to find a package waiting for me. No return address. Just my name on the front in red marker. Inside, a Polaroid. A photo of me sleeping. The room in the picture wasn't mine. It was the studio apartment. Same creaky floorboards. Same crooked blinds. And there I was curled on the futon, a faint line of drool escaping the corner of my mouth. The timestamp said it was taken 2 months ago. During the week, I lived there. Scrawled on the back in that same thin handwriting. "You dreamt we left." I dropped the photo and backed away. Suddenly, everything was sharp again. The air, the quiet, the feeling that someone was behind me, watching. I turned. No one there. But that night, I had the worst dream yet. In it, I was a child again, standing at the edge of the woods in Oregon. My mother called for me from the porch, but I couldn't move. My feet were rooted in place because the 3 watchers were there. Only now I could see their faces, and they wore mine, each one twisted, hollow-eyed, a grotesque echo of who I might have become if something inside me had rotted and grown teeth. "We are you," they said in unison. Then they opened their mouths wide, too wide, and the forest fell silent. The sky peeled back, and I fell into them. I woke up screaming, hands clutching at my face. I was bleeding. My nose, my ears, my nails were torn like I clawed at something in my sleep, and on my chest, written in what I hope was only blood, were the words, "Come back." I think they're pulling me again, calling me, drawing me towards something unfinished. I thought leaving the apartment would free me, but it wasn't the apartment. It was me. It was them. And they never left. I didn't go to work the next day, or the one after that. There's no point pretending anymore. The watchers don't care for routine. They wait in the corners of your eye, feed off your silence, and grow in your forgetting. I spent hours just staring at that photograph, trying to find proof it was fake, some Photoshop error, some weird prank. But deep down, I knew better. They had been in the room, with me. I reached out to my mother. We hadn't spoken in years, not since her second husband came into the picture and made everything complicated. But now I needed answers. I needed to know if she remembered what happened in Oregon, if she had ever been watched. She hesitated when she answered the phone. Her voice trembled when I asked her plainly, "Do you remember the forest house?" A long pause, then a soft reply. They came back to me too. She didn't say who they were. She didn't have to. She said after we moved, the dreams followed her for a while, but then she learned how to ignore them, muffle them, pretend they were just stress, she whispered, and eventually they stopped showing up. But not for me. Maybe I was the one they really wanted. Maybe they were never done. That night, I made a decision, one I didn't tell her about. I booked a flight to Oregon. The forest house was still there, old, rotted, forgotten, half collapsed under moss and time. But the bones remained: the porch, the broken swing, the window from my old room. I stepped over the sagging threshold, flashlight in hand. Dust choked the air. The walls moaned as if remembering. My breath fogged in front of me, even though it was the middle of summer. I stood in the living room and called out. I came back. Silence. Then the wind picked up outside, though none of the trees moved, and something deep in the house in the dark hallway that led to the back rooms creaked. I followed the sound. Each step felt like a regression back into childhood, back into fear. The back bedroom door was open. Inside, nothing. No furniture. No footprints. Just a note, lying dead center on the floorboards. I picked it up. "Now we can finish." The door slammed behind me. I spun, heart thundering, and saw darkness thicker than any shadow should be pooling into the corners, rising like smoke. The air buzzed, charged like before lightning strikes. The walls of the house began to breathe, and then they stepped out. One by one, they emerged from shadows, not walking, not floating, shifting. 3 of them, my watchers. Except now they didn't look like me. They looked like everything I had buried, every memory I tried to suppress, every cruel word I'd spoken, every shame I cloaked in silence. They were twisted manifestations of me, yes, but also something older, ancient, patient, with skin like smoke and eyes like black stars. "You came back," one whispered, voice like crumbling leaves. "We kept our promise," said another. "You were never alone," the third finished. I opened my mouth to scream, to plead, to pray, but all that came out was one word: "Why?" They smiled in unison. "Because you watched us first." The floor beneath me vanished. I fell not down, but inward, into memory, into noise, into a place outside time where the watchers reside. My body stayed behind, kneeling in the dust of a house long forgotten. But my mind, my soul, that's where I am now, watching. If you're here this, it means I found way back. But I'm not the same. I see things now, in the corners, in the mirrors, in the eyes of strangers on the train. And sometimes, when I'm alone at night, I leave notes around the house without meaning to. Just 4 words. Nice shirt today.